Let the blame game begin. President Biden is still holding out hope for control of the House as Democrats ramp up the intra-party fighting over why they lost key seats to the Republicans. The grand old party is edging close to the magic number of 218 for the majority, and they are still confident they will get there. But Biden seems to think the Dems may eke out a win.
Well, you know, it's still alive. It's still alive. It's like drawing an inside straight, but it's still alive.
And while Biden hopes for a miracle, the Democrats are knifing each other. Ousted New York House Democrat Sean Maloney is calling out Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the wake of his embarrassing loss. Quote, "The last time I ran into AOC, we were beating her endorsed candidate 2-1 in a primary. And I didn't see her 1 minute of these midterms helping our House majority. So I'm not sure what kind of advice she has, but I'm sure she'll be generous with it." AOC firing right back by telling Maloney to, quote, "take some ownership." Democrats also lost seats in Florida. And strategist James Carville thinks it's time to give up on the Sunshine State.
We don't lose that bad in Mississippi. I think that, you know, it's not as many electoral votes, but I think Democrats might be better off looking harder at Mississippi than Florida. I don't know that. I'm just going to riff off the top of my head. But it's been very frustrating.
Okay. All right. Dana, I'll start with you. Okay. So Sean Maloney, and I've been interested in that race, you know, from the get-go. When he was in Paris raising money on that balcony, do you remember that, Harold? I was really upset about that.
I don't follow him that closely.
Yeah. Well, we did on the 5. You didn't read the package that day. But you probably weren't on that day. But the point is that he seems to be blaming AOC as not doing enough. Should she have done more?
Well, I have two ways of answering this. So Sean Maloney, when he got redistricted, he basically ousted a Democratic incumbent, and then he lost to a Republican. And he's head of the Democratic Congressional Committee. That's really saying something. So he lost. It's an embarrassing loss. He also didn't do well across the board in New York, but partly because of how well Lee Zeldin did, because they lost many seats in Hudson River Valley and Long Island. Now, if I were him and I had just lost, instead of plotting my next political move, I'd take a few days off, go on vacation, maybe go back to Paris. Just like take a minute before blaming other people. I understand that you're mad, but maybe that's something you do behind closed doors, because I thought AOC's response to him was pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of it is she was complaining about raising money. It was $250,000. If you look at the comparatively how much that's a drop in the bucket. Nancy Pelosi can raise that in 10 minutes. But because AOC is better at the small dollar donations like Bernie Sanders is, or even like a Marjorie Taylor Greene is, that's her strong point. I would say this. Do you remember when I kept saying, where is the squad? They were very quiet all summer and all fall. They were hiding because they knew that they were going to be blamed. And now, because they are going to be emboldened, if Biden runs again, or even if he doesn't, the squad people, they're going to be real, or what are we calling them now? The tyrants. They're going to be mad, and they're going to be very loud. So be ready.
You know, yesterday, Harold, we talked about the squad now having 10 people in it. And, you know, so they're going to be stronger and louder than they were before. But to go back to Sean Maloney, he blamed Hochul. He said Hochul was one of the reasons that, you know, as a governor at the top of the ticket, she should have been helping, you know, some of the congressional candidates in the Hudson Valley, along with his race as well. I mean, did she have a responsibility?
Well, she's the governor, so she was at the head of the ticket. But look, the fights today are happening everywhere. Look, the fight between Maloney and AOC has been going on for a long, long time. I don't think there's any love lost there, and it just didn't occur over the last 72 hours. Everybody needs to take a lesson from this campaign. Democrats probably shouldn't overreact, although it was a pretty doggone good night for the Democratic Party. They may end up winning an outright majority in the U.S. Senate with an additional seat if the vote counting, as it's looking like it's going, could very well lead to that. Two, the problems in the country didn't go away because Republicans didn't score the victories they wanted, or the size of the victories they wanted. What the country basically said was voters voted for the poison they knew, and they didn't necessarily vote for any new poison. Be it Democrat or Republican. Look at the governors. Florida was a great night for DeSantis, but Michigan was a great night. DeSantis and Republicans. Michigan was a great night for Democrats. The governor was reelected. The attorney general was reelected. The secretary of state. The House and the Senate in Michigan flipped. So there are a lot of stories that have come out of this. If I were Republicans, what I'd be most concerned about is what is it that the country didn't fully trust to give us the ability and the capacity and the tools to help fix these problems? And two, they've got to sort out some of their leadership issues with Mr. McCarthy and obviously at the top of the ticket with the presidency. And Democrats have to figure out this was not an affirmation for the squad or for their politics. The country basically said, those who are too far to the left, too far to the right, wherever you may sit at TV the opposite way, we want you coming back to the middle here. And if you don't come back to the middle, we're gonna push you out. We can look at some of these governor's races where Republicans who thought they were favored are having a hard time. We'll see what happens as the votes are counted. But I'm just glad that the country and that voters, I'm not surprised, but I'm relieved and happy, though, that everybody seems to have accepted these outcomes. And we'll now sort through and try to give some commentary around it. But Democrats, they didn't affirm the squad's message. And Republicans, they didn't trust you to fix the challenges. So if I were in Congress or the Senate, I'd roll my sleeves up and figure out how I work with the other side to address some of these big problems.
You know, Will, the president said he was looking forward to working with the other side, but is there anything in what he has done in the last 2 years that indicates that he's actually willing to do that?
No, there's absolutely nothing to suggest there will be any type of bipartisan progress to be made going forward. I appreciate that Harold said that this is not an affirmation of the squad or the left's far left agenda. You know, I do think that there's a bit this week to hear from Democrats and President Biden in particular where there's an attempt to claim some victory. It's true that Republicans performed below expectations, but that's a bit like the losing football team bragging about covering. Democrats saying they had some type of victory this week was, well, we still lost power, but we covered the spread. It is a bit of a loser's message. The bottom line is they no longer have unilateral power in the federal government.
We'll see. We don't know that for a fact. We'll see here in the next couple of days. And you're probably right.
That's a fair caveat. That's a fair caveat. And as to Sean Patrick Maloney, I would like to say this. I don't know what he expected. AOC is an Instagram influencer. She is a TikTok star. She has no real influence on policy, and she had no real influence on this politics. And she happens to be one of the biggest stars of the Democratic Party, along with two-time loser Stacey Abrams and three-time loser Beto O'Rourke.
Don't forget Charlie Crist.
And you know what's interesting about that, Greg? I mean, is that there she is, as Will says, a star in the Democrat Party, AOC, and yet someone, I think may have been Maloney, referred to her as a ghost in Washington. She wasn't fighting for the majority. And I ran statewide, and I lost to Andrew Cuomo. I mean, I didn't say a word. I just, kind of licked my wounds and just moved on. I mean, you shouldn't be moaning about that stuff, but you expect the party to help you.
You know, what is interesting, too, is she has completely ignored her constituents and New Yorkers in general when it comes to them saying they don't feel safe. She just did an interview. What did she say? She didn't feel safe. It was an interview with Chris Wallace, and she feels that she can't walk her dog at night. And it's like, that's terrible for anybody, but it's terrible for everybody. So now she understands how her constituents and how people feel on the subway, and maybe that'll give her a little bit more compassion for the people that are worried about crime. Everybody's blaming everyone, which means it's a pretty good outcome, right?
Yeah.
Republicans are blaming Trump. Trump's blaming Fox. Maloney's blaming AOC. AOC's blaming capitalism. MSNBC is blaming white people. I blame Brian Kilmeade. Dana's blaming climate change. It's like the reading of a will of a rich relative. Everybody left a little disappointed and a little pleased, but get this, you left. Life goes on. The bright side is no one is really happy. And the only reason why Joe seems happy is that his expectations are lower than Hunter's morals. So it's easy for him to kind of roll along. About Carville, rather than writing off Florida, why not ask what can be learned from Florida, right? We have states are basically like their own little independent experiments, right? You can see, hey, maybe if it does, rather than national, that's what states are for. So with COVID and hurricanes, what state did better in dealing with emergencies? You could say it's Florida. So what could you learn about a state that doesn't have layers of slow-moving bureaucracy versus, being a freedom-leading state as opposed to one that is relying on the tight control of government? That's something that somebody can look at Florida and go, how do they do this? This is interesting, rather than just saying, that's their California. That's what he's basically saying is the way Republicans have written off California, they're going to write off Florida or New York. But you know what? We're coming back. I would say the right is coming back in New York, and, we have a lot to thank to Zeldin for that. And that's all I got to say, Judge.
Well, that's enough. Coming up next, President Biden oversees and ramping up his global warming hysteria by warning the world of climate hell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.